Jesus never existed. Do you want to know how I know? Prophecies. Not a single prophecy uttered by Jesus throughout the entire New Testament has actually come true. Let's knock the most obvious one out first. Mark chapter 13. As he came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what large stones and what large buildings." Then Jesus asked him, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left here upon another. All will be thrown down." Now, if you read this passage as a prophecy of the destruction of the temple, congratulations, that is what the author of the Gospel of Mark intended. He wanted you to read this as a prophecy, but the problem is that the Gospel according to Mark was written after the destruction of the temple. And we know this because it deals with theological issues that were more important to a church in which Gentiles were ascendant. As we discussed in a previous video, prophecy is not forward-looking. It's not about actually predicting the future. Prophecy is about explaining where we are now and how we got there. The reason that Mark's Jesus knows that the temple will be destroyed is not because he predicted it. It's because when Mark was writing, it was already destroyed. Mark is trying to spin the destruction of the temple from being a shocking and heartbreaking failure on the part of Yahweh to protect his temple and his people into a preordained event that was foreseen by Jesus. Another famous prophecy is from Matthew 16:28. "Truly I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." Now, it does not take a rocket scientist to parse what Jesus is saying here. He is saying that not everybody who is with me right now in this exact moment will have died before I return. The problem is that all of the people that were standing with him in that moment, if they ever existed at all did indeed die. Spoiler alert. Early Christians tried to gloss over this obvious error on Jesus' part by referring to the Gospel according to John, chapter 21, verses 21 and 22. When Peter saw him, he said to Jesus, "Lord, what about him?" And Jesus said to him, "If it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you?" These two lines were taken to mean that Jesus had chosen St. John to remain here on earth as an immortal until Jesus' return. I'm not exactly sure how widespread this belief is nowadays, but I can tell you, my mom did believe this. Lastly, we're going to look at one that ought to be a slam dunk for Christianity, and that would be Luke chapter 21, verses 9 to 11. "When you hear of wars and insurrections, do not be terrified, for these things must take place first, but the end will not follow immediately." And then he said to them, "Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, and in various places famines and plagues, and there will be dreadful portents and great signs from heaven." I mean, this is news to exactly 0 people watching this video, but every single time there's an outbreak of a virus, be it COVID-19 or HIV/AIDS, every time there's an earthquake or a tsunami, or a drought or a famine, or a war, or any kind of a disaster, Christians for 2,000 years have taken to the publishing houses, have taken to the pulpits, in more recent times have taken to the airwaves and started to trumpet the end of the world, saying that this time for real, it's finally over. Jesus is finally coming back. And things just kind of keep going on the way they did before. Prophecy is not forward-looking. It's explaining the here and now, as we just said. Luke's Jesus is telling his followers to expect calamities because they were experiencing calamities when Luke was writing. Luke's readers would have lived through the Jewish War of 70 CE and the destruction of the temple. They would have seen the expulsion of the Jews from Rome and the levying of the Fiscus Judaicus, which was a punitive tax that was levied only against Jews and Gentile converts to Judaism, that forced them to pay what they normally would have paid to the temple directly to Rome. It was intended as an insult and a humiliation to the entire Jewish people. They were experiencing calamity after calamity. This is Luke's way of saying, guys, it's all good because you know what? Jesus told us this was going to happen. So don't leave the church. Don't separate yourself from the assembly. Stay with us because this is just the way things have to be. This is how it goes with every single prophecy Jesus makes in the New Testament. When you drill down into the context of the statement, it's always related to the calamities that were being experienced by the community at that time. It's actually a pretty ingenious way of reassuring the members of a small and persecuted new religion and convincing them not to leave. And besides, if somebody really were able to see the future, especially if that somebody were the living son of the one true God, you would think he would be a little bit more specific with his predictions. Maybe give us a couple of warnings about some really bad stuff that we could maybe avoid. But no, it's all just vague nonsense that could be applied to any time and any place, because Jesus never existed.